there, fellow travelers. Mark here with Wolters World, and today we're in Évora, Portugal. And today we're going to talk about are some of the things that tourists could do that might upset the locals when you come here to Portugal. And before I get started, I got to let you know, the Portuguese are totally chill. Like, most of the time, you're not going to have any problems with them. They're not going to be upset with really much of anything. But there are a few things that might get them to raise their eyebrow at you or maybe say something underneath their breath about you. And I think one of it really starts, or a few of them actually really deal with their neighbors to the east, Spain. And that is, whenever I'm going to Portugal, people ask me, oh, do they speak Spanish in Portugal? No, they speak Portuguese in Portugal. Right there, you're already in the doghouse. You ask, you speak Spanish in Portugal? No, there's a language called Portuguese. It came from Portugal. So that's one thing that might get them. Or if you say that Portugal is part of Spain or was part of Spain, well, technically for a little bit of time, it was part of Spain, but they love their independence here. And no, they do not and will never be again part of Spain. So do not bring that one up. Even if you do bring up that they were ruled by Spain for a little while, just kind of stay away from that one. They even have an Independence Day for it, but shh. Now, another thing I think is really important is you have to understand is the Portuguese are very proud people. So anytime you say anything disparaging about Portugal, and it could be about the food, about the people, even about their government, about the cities, the countries, the beaches, restaurants, they take it personally and they will be like, no. We are special. We are Portugal. Do not talk bad about us. Only we, the Portuguese, can talk bad about Portugal. So do know that, because I know some tourists want to point out shortcomings of places they go or compare it to where they're back home. Don't do that here in Portugal. I'm going to tell you that one right now, and especially when it comes to the food, because there's a special level of pride that the Portuguese have in their food, whether it is having one of the 365,000 different versions of bacalhau, codfish dishes you can have here, or the assorda, or the porco preto. It doesn't matter. Their food, they're so proud of. And if you diss their food, oh, that's going to upset them right there. I mean, I've had students, I just mentioned that I liked French food, and they're like, oh, well, Portuguese food's like French food, but better. So do know that sometimes that Portuguese pride, pops out sometimes. Another thing that might upset a Portuguese person, if you tell them you're staying at an Airbnb or an apartment rental in the historic parts or the center parts of like Lisbon or Porto, because Portugal is one of those countries that really got hit hard where the people were driven out of their homes and out of their neighborhoods because the price of housing went up so much, because so many Airbnbs and apartment rentals came to Portugal and people bought them out. So there is some animosity with that. I know a lot of my friends, they'd love to live in Campo de Rico, they'd love to live in Baixo or Chiado or around there, but they just can't afford it, so they've had to move out to the suburbs. So that's kind of a touchy subject that we as tourists actually do impact their lives because of all the apartment rentals that have really taken over Lisbon. So do know that wherever you're staying could be a topic of contention with some of the locals. So we're going to continue our ways you upset the locals in Portugal here in Lisbon. And I'm going to give a few Lisbon-specific ways to upset people. And yes, that apartment rental thing, that really takes effect here because so many people have had to move out of the center into the suburbs because they couldn't afford accommodation in the center. So be aware of that one. But I think one thing you don't realize as a tourist, you brought some things with you of caused things to happen aside from the increased prices that upsets them. And that are the tuk-tuks. Yes, so the tuk-tuks that are here, if you say, oh, I took the tuk-tuks around, they're like, oh, they take up the parking spots, they get in the way, they make traffic worse. Like, that's one thing that kind of irks them. Another thing is if you're a tourist and you have friends here in Lisbon and you ask them to take Tram 28 with you. Look, I have a friend of mine, he literally lives where Tram 28 starts, and he's like, Mark, please for the love of God, don't ask me to go with you. I'm like, hey, don't worry, I know, there's plenty of other views here in Lisbon to get. You don't have to take Tram 28. I mean, it costs more to buy the ticket when you get on the train, too. And even the locals tell you, the pickpockets, like, please, don't make me go. And so it's not necessarily that they're like mad at you for wanting them to go. It's just that you don't respect their time, energy, and the fact they don't want to get smushed up and worry about their wallet the whole time. Now, when you go around Lisbon, you might end up in the Belém district. I mean, you have to end up in the Belém district with the Torre de Belém, the museum, the Monument of Discoveries, the Mosteiro de Jerónimos. I mean, where the real Pastel de Belém are from. Oh, you got to go to the Pastéis de Belém place and have them there. So much better than all these other places. But the thing is, when you're there, you see the Monument to the Discoveries. And one thing that'll upset a Portuguese person is if you kind of downplay the discoveries, Henry the Navigator and Vasco da Gama and Magalhães, Fernão Magalhães. Oh, that's right. He sailed for Spain as Ferdinand Magellan. Oh, yeah. Don't diss the discoveries because they're like, that's when we were in power. I'm like, you mean 500 years ago? Yes, but we still have saudades, longing for those days, right? So that is one thing I just want you to know is their pride they have for Portugal also extends back 500 years of discovery. So don't be like, yeah, dude, that was a long time ago. No, that doesn't go over well. Now, another thing as a tourist, I got to tell you, coming to Portugal is a very affordable destination. But one thing that will upset the locals, if you kind of keep harping on how cheap Portugal is, because it's cheap for you because you're making US salaries or German salaries or UK salaries, Canada salaries, they make a lot more money outside of Portugal than the people that are actually in here. So what's cheap for us as tourists is not cheap for the locals. And that's one of those things that kind of hurts them, that you're like, hey, it's affordable. Like, you say affordable, they're cool with that. You say it's cheap, that kind of irks them, because like, you know what, it's not cheap for me when I'm only making 1,000 euros a month. Another thing that I've learned that upsets the locals here in Portugal is if you speak with a Brazilian accent. Look, when I got here to Portugal, I lived in Brazil, so I had a very strong Brazilian accent. Like, I was like, bem brasileiro when I got here, right? And my students say, wow, you speak really good Brazilian. And so there is kind of like a superiority complex that Portuguese sometimes have over Brazilians or people with Brazilian accents. So just know that if you're speaking about Brazil in a better way than Portugal, they'll probably have a snide comment to go along with that. And then when you go out to eat, another way to kind of irk your friends is when they try to grab a piece of your food, you stop them. Look, here in Portugal, it's almost like a communal table. Everybody orders stuff, but if you want to try somebody else's dish, it's not uncommon for your friend to reach over and grab a little bite, or you share a bite, or hey, would you like some? They're very much a sharing culture, and that's one of those things that sometimes tourists don't realize, and they're like eating with, they're like, no, it's mine. Like, they're protecting their food like they're in jail. You don't do that here. It's more of an open table kind of thing, and if you kind of block them off from that, it is kind of a rude gesture, so just be aware of that. I mean, don't expect the locals to like take all of your food, but maybe they want to have a bite. You know what's cool is if you get a bite of their food, you can explore more great foods and, treats when you are here. So don't be too upset by that, all right? So share, be a good little kid and share your food, all right? So these are some fun little things, or not so fun little things, that I've seen over the years that upset Portuguese people, that things that tourists do. What are things that you see tourists do here in Portugal that upsets the locals? Let us know in the comments below so we can help other travelers be better travelers when they come here to Portugal. And I'll say adeus from here in beautiful sunny Lisbon.